Great, thanks. Thanks everyone for coming. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Deschutes County, welcome to the Forum for Candidates for the Redmond School Board. My name is Tim Trainer. I'm editor of the Redmond Spokesman. Thank you to the candidates who are participating tonight and running for election. We appreciate the gravity of doing so. Candidates in this race, if you raise your hand when I call you out here, Eric Lee and Ashley Proctor. They're running for position 1, and Joelle Leger and Amanda Page. They are candidates for position 3. The responsibilities of a school board member includes approving the budget and the curriculum, hiring and evaluating the superintendent, and adopting policy. Tonight, each candidate will have 1 minute for opening remarks and 1.5 minutes to answer each question. These questions have been submitted by the public and screened by the League of Women Voters. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for a closing remark. Please hold your applause and refrain from comments during the forum, and please mute your phones so we can hear from the candidates themselves. For opening statements, we randomly selected the order, and the order of who answers each question will be rotated as we go along. So we'll begin with candidate opening statements, 1 minute each, and Ashley, you will begin.
Can you hear me? Oh, yeah. Thanks, Tim, and hello, everyone. My name is Ashley Proctor, as Tim had mentioned, and I'm running for Redmond School Board Position 1. As a mother, a lot of it is figuring out what availability I have, and so running for school board was one of those things where it was taking top priority because I wanted to, 1, work with the kiddos in my community, but 2, I'm somebody of service and community, so I really wanted to bridge those 2 things that I find really important and serve in this capacity. And so I look forward to answering questions and having you get to know me a bit more again. So thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Eric Lee. Thank you very much for being here. I am the position number 1 incumbent on the Redmond School Board. I am passionate about public school education, and you'll hear me say this time and again this afternoon. I am passionate about public school education for all students. I believe that the state of education in Oregon is in serious disrepair. We can do a lot of things about it. It's not so hard to right the ship. It takes a lot of very simple solutions, but a lot of hard work. Those simple solutions are based on the things that we already know that used to work, that we've abandoned to a significant degree. And I very much want to talk about that and to emphasize those basic points. But fundamentals of class size, continuing to ensure we have reasonable class sizes. We're looking at having contact hours that we don't reduce. Time in the classroom produces results. We're looking at improving curriculum. Redmond does better than the state in general, but the state is a very, very low bar. We can do better. We're improving our curriculum. We're seeking to take database solutions, data-driven solutions for better curriculum, and my time is up. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tim. Thank you, League of Women Voters, for having us here. It's really an opportunity for the candidates to speak, so we appreciate that. Thank you to the community for coming out, giving us your support, and asking these really important questions. We really appreciate that. My name is Joelle Leger. My husband and I, Zachary, have been married for 20 years this summer. We have 4 boys, ages 6 to 15. I received my Bachelor of Science degree from Western Baptist College. Now you might know it as Corbin University, which is in Salem, Oregon. I taught for 5.5 years prior to having children. And my husband and I run a small family farm with a meat business with beef, pork, and lamb, and eggs, gold in today's society. I'm the Children's Ministry Director at Crossing Church, and that's where I oversee the children program from birth to 5th grade. I'm running for the director position because I wanted an opportunity to serve the community in a way that fits my skill set and my experience. Thank you for having me.
So Kacha, Nua Awaksikni, Komadokni, Kawasasi, Amanda Page. Thank you for coming. My name is Amanda Page. I'm an enrolled member of the Klamath Tribes. I descend from the Awaksikni and Modokni people. And I tell you that because that explains why I'm running for school board. I come from the people, and one of our best phrases is homaski. And it's a thing that we used to say to encourage other people to do good, to do right in this world, to serve their people. And I have dedicated my entire life to the concept of homaski as my compass. And one way that I've done that is my work on the school board. I work really hard to ensure that every student has resources they need to be successful, regardless of where they come from. I also am laser focused on student outcomes. I don't think that we have time, nor should we be wasting our time on culture wars. I think we should be spending our time ensuring that kids have the best outcomes possible. And finally, I'm really passionate about every student graduating with a career path that they are excited about, that they're inspired by, whether that is going straight into the workforce, going into a trade, or going on to college. I want all of our kids to be excited about their futures.
Great, thank you. We now move on to questions for the candidates, beginning with some questions submitted by Redmond students. You have a minute and a half to answer, and Amanda, we'll start with you. The first question that came from a student here at the Redmond School District says, do you think Redmond schools should change its schedule to match Ben's later start time? Why or why not?
Yeah, this is that was late. This is something I thought a lot about, having a kid who is a teenager. I recognize that there's a lot of studies that show that teenagers actually perform better when they have later school start times. I think that's really interesting data, and I think it's something we definitely need to look into as a school board. I also recognize that creates additional challenges for parents, right? We all have our schedules that we're used to, and that can create problems or changes when we have to switch that up. And so I think it's definitely something that we need a lot of community input from. I don't think it's a decision that should be made by 5 board members. I think it's a decision that should be made by our students, by our educators, by our classified staff, so that we have the best information possible and we do what's best for our students.
Thank you. Joelle, we'll go to you next.
That's a great question. It's definitely delayed. All right. I would say I've heard a lot regarding the older students that they need to have their sleep. The regulation is really a big deal. So I heard younger students need to start earlier and older students do benefit from starting later. That does beg the question, you have sports later in the day, drama, music, activities. I do not think this is something that could be done lightly. I think we have to really consider all aspects, but I do think it should be on the table. And I think this is a district level decision that has to be really taken into consideration. Again, this can't just be made by 5 people or even 1 or 2 administrators. This has to be a community-wide decision. Does this fit for our local community?
Eric, we'll go to you next.
Good afternoon again. I don't have anything novel to say here. The responses from Amanda and Joelle, I think, were spot on. I think there's data to demonstrate that there's value in beginning later for older kids, but we need to not fail to recognize all the variables involved in such a complex decision. We already have difficulty in providing the necessary supports to ensure that kids get to school on time, that they're fed appropriately, that they're ready to learn. And when we start to change that and their parents have to be at work and they have to depend on getting those kids to school, that creates some very significant challenges. And I know this is what Amanda was talking about, but I'm just kind of expanding on it because we do agree. I think it's worth another look. It's not something that we take lightly. We need to collect the data. We need to look to see what the actual cost fiscally as well as the cost socially would be to execute on such a decision. We need to encourage people in this current environment to be working and contributing, and putting up barriers to people being able to effectively do that might not be a very wise decision. But again, it's probably something that will impact all students, and the data really is, the data about late start is restricted primarily to the older students and not the younger ones. So that's yet another variable to be considered. I think it's something that we should talk about, but it would be something that would be slow to change, and again, we'd have to do a lot of research before we pull the trigger on such a change.
I agree with a lot of the statements that have already been said, but another thing I want to point out is Redmond is not Bend. So we do not need to vote something in just because Bend is doing it. I agree that we need to collect data, and as a social worker, we're always looking at the health and well-being of children and the individuals that we take care of in our community, right? So data is important to inform us how the things that we're voting on and the things that we're putting into practice they're gonna have a greater benefit, right? The things that would be impacted are sports, after-school activities, but we could get creative. We could do before-school activities potentially. I do want to take into consideration job schedules and the community itself is structured as so. So if we're starting with, or if we're doing later start times, how is that going to impact the families? But all of us candidates, I think, agree with that. So that's a really great start, that you have some candidates that are going to work hard to get the data and make the best decision for our community together.
Thank you. Eric, we'll start with you with this next question. Once again, from a Redmond student. How can the Redmond School Board assist low-income students in reaching their goal of going to college?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. I'm really glad to hear that coming from a student, because we're planting the right ideas in our students. I think we need to start with asking ourselves, what routes are valid for our students, and I would begin to argue sort of against that as a universal solution. And we need to work a little bit harder on providing the foundational education that the kids need to be the masters of their own futures and deciding where they want to go and what they want to do next, whether it's preparing them for a career, preparing them for trade-type careers, or whether it's going on to university. I think one of the biggest things that we can do for kids that would like to go on to university and to enable them to do that is to hook them up with services that are already available. We have a lot of services available. There are some really good books out there you might want to read that talk about kids coming from poverty that have a great deal of opportunity, but they don't know it. So it's not a lack of resources, it's a lack of knowledge. So we get out there, our school counselors, our teachers, when they get out there and they demonstrate to them what is available to them and how to access those resources, I think it will open doors to them. So again, I don't think it's a lack of money, for those low-income students. I think it's a lack of knowledge of the opportunity that they have.
Ashley, we'll go to you.
Do you mind repeating the question again?
Sure. How can the Redmond School Board help low-income students reach their goal of going to college?
Thank you. This question is immensely important, and to inform you all just kind of where I'm coming from, I'm a first-generation high school graduate. So neither of my parents graduated high school. I was born to a teen mom, and so school was a huge challenge to overcome. I was successful because of the educators that were in my life and because of mentors. And I think when looking back, I had the guidance counselors, I had the social workers, I had those supports in place to make me the most successful that I can and the potential that I didn't realize that I had. So I really would like to think outside the box and think that we can create a mentor program, potentially, get our community involved where it's not just more teachers and social workers talking to students, right? It's maybe some of the older students that have gone to college who can come back and connect with other students, right? Bringing some of that school pride and spirit and community spirit back to why this is important and make it a little less scary, because I'll tell you what, it was terrifying going to college. It was more terrifying going to college than joining the military when I did. I also want to make students aware that you don't have to go to college right out the gate. I'm really grateful I joined the military when I did. I was 17 and I was enlisted for 7 years until I realized I wanted to go to college and I was ready for it. So I think there are other ways to success, and I think it is important to talk to students about those other opportunities so they can unlock their full potential. Thank you.
Thanks, Joelle.
I love this question because I think that most students that are struggling or come from that poverty situation, what they mainly lack is confidence. And I remember specifically one college professor that saw something in myself that I didn't even see in myself at the time. And he just poured into me and you can do, he was like, you could go to, teach English overseas, you could do this. And it was just like, wow, he sees something in me that I don't even see myself. And I strongly believe that these educators, they have the intensely profound opportunity to pour into these kids in a way that a lot of people don't have. And so when we can build that confidence in students, and I'm not talking just educators, I'm talking as a community, when there's 1 or 2 people in their life, they can reach the limit of no limits, what sky's the limit, because they realize anything I want to do, I can do. And so to me, it's more of a mindset that they need to change. The resources are there. They just need to know anything that they want to do, they can do it.
Am I next?
Yep.
I can really speak to this. I come from one of the most impoverished communities in Oregon. Jinglewood, Oregon is where I was born, raised, went to school. I want to push back a little bit on this narrative that people just need the encouragement or there's resources already there, they just need to try harder. Coming from one of those communities, I can tell you that that's not the case. I was with plenty of kids who were encouraged and tried really, really hard, and they didn't have access to the resources they needed to be successful. It's one thing to tell a student, yes, you're smart enough, you can go to college. It's quite another to show them the way, to say, let me sit down with you and talk about the past. How are you going to pay for college without having crippling debt? How are you going to choose a career path that is actually going to afford you an income that will help you pay off that debt if you do have to take it? We talk about all of these scholarships that are available to kids, but do you know that these scholarships that are directed to low-income kids have significantly more applicants than they're able to award? So it's not enough resources. We need to get creative, like Ashley said, about how we work with kids, how we talk with kids, and then how we show them that path. We can't just say, try harder, do better. And not even to our teachers, don't try to be more compassionate. We need to tell everyone, here's a system, here's how it works. Let us walk with you through it, whether that's through mentorship or providing additional resources. The burden is on us to work harder and try harder and figure out how to get these students there.
Thank you. We have one final question from the school district student, and Joelle, we'll start with you. What do you see as the most essential things to address with Redmond High School's remodel?
My oldest son is at Redmond High School. It is a beautiful campus, but when you go in, you see there's issues. When we went in for registration, there were trash cans because there were clearly leaks. There were things going on. It's the day before school's starting, and there's areas that are cordoned off because there's damage to the floor and the roof, and you can just see that the building's dilapidated. There's things that need to happen. So I think we just need to have a holistic look and see what's going on and be able to take that money from the bond and work on this capital campaign and do it the best way we can, most efficiently.
Amanda?
I think the first thing we need to do is make sure that our kids have a space where it's safe, where they're not dealing with leaks. This bond is going to do the necessary work to repair the wet side of the HVAC system that is causing the leak issues. So I think that's number one. Our students need to have a building where they're safe, they're warm, they can show up for school. Imperative. And so I think that's important. We don't necessarily have an option about what we're doing with this bond money. These bond monies have been allocated. We know how we're going to spend them. We have a plan for how we're going to spend them. It was voted on. But yes, it is our responsibility to do it in the most efficient way possible. We have done an amazing job with the last bond. And I say we, I mean the school board, the superintendent, all the people have worked together to make sure that we're putting that money into places where we can get rebates back so we can do even more with the money that we do have. So I would say making sure that the spaces are safe and then make sure that there's spaces where they're providing extra opportunities. So the expansion of the CTE, which we're in desperate need of, things like that are also really important.
Can you repeat
Yeah,
the
sure.
question again?
What do you see as the most essential things to address with Redmond High School remodel?
Great, thank you.
Sure.
As Amanda said, I was combing through the spreadsheet of the school bond, and most of those funds, if not all of those funds, are accounted for. The Redmond High School allocation is for that HVAC system. Of course, it would be nice to see that space upgraded because it is one of the older schools in the area. Moving forward, I'm really grateful that Redmond passed that school bond because it only passed by 52%, which means that maybe there wasn't enough information coming out to voters to have this bond continued, but I'm grateful it did because to have our schools be a healthy and safe space for our students is minimal requirement, right? So yes, that is my answer.
So the mission for Redmond High School was simply to bring it up to code so that it can be usable. Arguably, the most financially sound decision was actually to close Redmond High School. But we went on a roadshow as a board to learn what the community wanted, and the community wanted to keep 2 schools. So we really wanted to deliver on that. I serve on the finance committee and I chair the budget committee for the district, for the board. And we are dedicated to be transparent in how we do this. And when you put out a bond, you define what those monies are going to be used for. So we told people what we're going to use money for, and we will do that. But at the same time, we want to use it as an opportunity to bring better things to the kids. Ridgeview was built at a time, it was very fortuitous. We put out a bond, the bond passed, the economy tanked, we got a great deal for our money. So if you've ever been to Ridgeview, it's a very nice school. Redmond and Ridgeview have very different cultures, and it really has worked very well for them. But we do have a desire to bring some of the amenities to Redmond that Ridgeview get to experience. So in addition to the HVAC system, which is #1, because that brings the school up to codes that can be used for another 50 years, but we also want to expand CTE, that's Career Technical Education. We called it SHOP when we were kids, but it is so more than SHOP these days. They do amazing things. And they're going to improve the theater, and they're going to improve some classrooms. And so there's some really great things that have been done. We've made the promises, and we'll keep the promises.
Great, thanks. Ashley, we'll start with you in this next question. What do you think are the education gaps or weaknesses in our district currently, and how would you address those?
That's a great question. Currently, I know we are needing to ensure that 3rd graders are meeting those reading standards and assessments. So I'm really appreciative that we have a curriculum, the science of reading. And from what I've heard and gathered, students are enjoying it, they're engaging it more. So I hope to see future data that shows that that is a positive outcome. Some of the other gaps, I would say, is more community driven. Again, I'm really focused on soft skills within our community. We see a lot of division these days. We see a lot of folks that need to be able to adapt. And so I hope that in our schools we can see more of that community driven focal point. Yeah.
Thank you. Eric, I'll go to you.
So where do we, oops.
Oh, sorry, I turned it off.
Ashley's being good and shutting off the mic for me. So where do we start? What isn't wrong with the state of education in Oregon? There really isn't a metric by which we're excelling. So where do we start? We have data to show that our reading skills are very, very poor. Our assessments show we're hovering somewhere around 37% at grade level reading. And that's better than the state of Oregon overall. Our math scores are not much better. As we move on through education and we introduce more complex topics, we are lacking the foundational skills to tackle those. So we've got some really great programs in Redmond that are STEM and science oriented and things. But when they fail the foundational skills, we don't typically use very many textbooks these days, but they still have to read their material someplace, and that's often online. When your reading comprehension, a third of your students, I know it's not quite a third, a little more than a third, but a third of your students can't, are the ones that are reading at grade level. You got 2/3 of them that have a hard time comprehending the material in order to secure and do well in those more complex topics. So foundational elements, we need to improve reading. Ashley mentioned the science of reading. It's a good, strong curriculum. It's going back to something that used to work. It's more phonics-based than what we have been using for the last several years that has not worked for our kids. So it's data-driven. It worked before. It will work again. Mathematics, my time is up. Thank you.
Joelle, we'll go to you next.
Yeah, that's a great question. I won't repeat the things that have been stated, those are obvious. As I'm going through the community and hearing from people, it's very obvious that there's a concern for the distractions in the classroom, whether that be kids that are dysregulated and they're not able to be in the class functioning properly. Some of the schools have some methods that they're trying to work with that on, but what parents are feeling is that this is taking away from the education of my kids because there's too much going on that is attacking the teaching time. And so I think it's a really big thing. We need to make sure teachers are equipped. The classroom management piece, very simple, very basic, but critical. And as well, as these kids are going through their day, we just have to be able to help them see the value of their education, encourage them that this is a gift. This is not something to be taken lightly, you know. And that's a cultural thing that we can do, is to instill in them the love of learning, and that comes from the top down. And I just think the kids they're just ready to be moved in that direction, and it's exciting to see when they get a hold of that.
Surprise, surprise, I'm gonna push back a little bit again. I didn't like that statement about what isn't wrong with education in Oregon, because I can tell you what's going really well. I can tell you that we have teachers who are passionate about what they're doing. We have students who are trying their best to learn after recovering from COVID, and they're making great strides in that. We have an amazing CTE program. We have a lot to be proud of. That being said, there is work to be done, and we're on our way. Like Eric alluded to, we just started working on the science of reading, getting early literacy in our schools, helping the kids at the lower grade levels really get that foundational reading skills that they need to be successful throughout their career. And we've spent a ton of resources and time on that, and we're seeing great improvements. And I think we're going to see better, higher test scores when they come out next year. Again, we need to make sure that kids are attending school. The school district has made a concerted effort for multiple different ways to get kids back in school, make sure that their butts are in their seats so that they can learn. We've spent a lot of time on that. We realize it's not one size fits all, so the superintendent has been giving principals leeway to do it what works for their schools. So I think we're working on closing that learning gap. I think we have every reason to believe that we're going to be successful in that. We're working really hard.
Thanks. Amanda, we'll keep it with you for our next question.
No.
How would you define equity in the context of education, and how would you like that to be addressed in Redmond schools?
I think my favorite question. Equity is making sure that everyone has the resources to what they need to be successful, and removing any barriers that anyone has that are unnecessary that help so they can be successful. So I think the way this translates into our school district and in our schools is that we don't do a one-size-fits-all approach for all students. We know that does not work. We know some students come to school and they didn't have the same resources or opportunities that other kids did. So we need to close that gap. If they're coming to school and they haven't had breakfast, we need to make sure that they have breakfast. If they're coming to school and they're struggling with reading and they're not learning and they're not at reading level, then we need to make sure that they're getting level reading plus additional resources. Redmond Schools works really hard at this. They're really focused on looking at what students need extra resources and providing them so that every student can be successful. So again, my answer to equity means that every kid has what they need to be successful, and they don't have unnecessary barriers in their way that's preventing them from being successful.
Joelle?
I think that this question is difficult because there's never going to be an even playing field. You're never going to have the same socioeconomic, you're never going to have the same family, marriage status, you're never going to have the same living community, you're never going to have the same anything. So we're never going to level the playing field. What we have to do is equip kids to know that no matter what they face, no matter what they need, they can do this. Now you're right, we have to give them food, we have to make sure they have those things. But as a community, we can't lay the sole weight of all of the education just on the system. We have to look at the whole community as a whole. This cannot be, we're sending our kids to you and you're going to fix all their problems. We have to parent, we have to be involved, and we have to look at this holistically. And so every kid needs to be given the exact same opportunities, but there's never going to be 100% even, ever.
Eric?
So I think the question was about defining equity. I think Amanda did a very good job of that, and I'm not going to repeat it. But I would like to point out that one of the words she used over and over again was success. And we have to question ourselves, what is success? Who gets to define what success looks like? Equity takes that away from the individual. I want to give the kids equality. I want to give them access to the tools that they need to be successful according to their own rules. Because when you're looking at an outcome measure, somebody must be the decision maker, right? Somebody's got to decide, what does success look like? In our culture, often success looks like, every kid goes to university. I don't think that's where we need to be. I think success looks differently for each individual. And if we equip them to make their own decisions, give them the foundational elements to have a good future, they can be the masters of their own future. Equity doesn't allow that because somebody's got to decide what success looks like. When I talk to crowds, I often talk about equity in terms of a race. Everybody deserves their place on the starting line. And that's my goal, is to get everybody the opportunity to be there. How they prepare for that race, how they run that race, their motivation to win that race, that is up to the individual. That's what equality looks like. Equity means everybody finishes at the same time in the same place. That's not fair. I want to give every student the opportunity to run the race the way they want to run the race and to finish where they want to finish the race and give them all the tools to be successful according to their own definition.
I want to draw a distinction, the difference between equity versus equality. Equality is everyone gets the same breakfast every day. Equity is a child doesn't have breakfast, so we're going to offer it and make it accessible to them because we're going to remove the barrier that maybe they don't have breakfast available to them. But they still have a right to be fed. And I think as members of this community, we have a responsibility to take care of all of our children, regardless of where their starting line is. An example would be for my child who has a disability and they receive special education services. If my child is unregulated, chances are good he has an unmet need, right? Well, a child that is in a general class and doesn't have the same needs, or maybe isn't unregulated, isn't going to need the same resources that my child needs. And my child still deserves to have a right to be in that classroom and have his needs met, to be regulated, to be safe. Why? Because when they get out in that big, scary world, they're going to have to be successful in however they define that. But while they're here, in their hometown, in their schools, where it should, at a minimum, be a safe and healthy environment, their basic needs should be met. And that is equity. Equity is making sure that every child, despite where their starting point is, that their basic needs are met. And as a potential school board member, I would do everything within my ability to make sure that our students have those needs met.
Thanks. Eric, we'll start with you for this next question. Where do you stand on school voucher systems, also known as school choice initiatives, that would allow tax money to be used for homeschooling or for private schools?
You bet. This is a hot button topic, and I like it. Data shows states around the country that have school voucher systems have higher performing schools. It is as simple as that. There really isn't an exception. They're not all the best and we're all the worst, but generally speaking, states that offer vouchers have a better education system. And it's not simply because those are better schools or something, but it creates a competitive environment. The state of Oregon has had a long, fairly acrimonious history with our charter schools. Charter schools, in fact, are public schools. They're the same as the rest of the schools that we think about. They just come about, they have a slightly different regulatory method and a different leadership, but they are in fact public schools. The reason why they have been unpopular in the state of Oregon is because they're competitors. They are competitors because they create a different environment, different curriculum, different philosophies. It's an alternative to the standard public school option. And there's a lot of opponents to the competition out there. But for me, competition is a good thing. So I think school vouchers would be a good idea. I'm not looking to lose a bunch of students to these alternative education systems, but I think I am looking forward to the motivation to do better in our schools to retain the students that we have.
Ashley?
I have a different opinion of this. I think voucher systems send mixed messages. I believe in our teachers, I believe in our schools, and when we find ways to hold our schools accountable, to even the playing field where they're delivering what they're supposed to do to all students, I think families would agree to making sure all of our schools are provided with resources, that all of our teachers are feeling supported, because in return, they're gonna support our kiddos. So I do believe in having choices, but I really would like to see those resources allocated to our schools so that the teachers can do what they do best, and they're the subject matter experts in their field.
Joelle?
Yes, I definitely agree with vouchers. I am a living, walking proof of that. I have 3 of my children at home in an online charter school and then 1 in the public school system. I'm all about parent choice. What is best for your student? We're talking about the education of all students. It is not going to be a one-size-fits-all. It shouldn't be a threat to the public school if they're getting monies for those kids that are there. If these kids are here and you're still getting the same amount of money for the kids you have. Per capita, you're good to go. So it shouldn't be an issue. It should be what works for you. Do you want to do private school, public school, homeschool, charter school? What is going to work? That's what matters, is that we are involved and able to give the best choice for each kid. And it's not going to look the same. What works for my oldest son may not work for my youngest, and that's just the way it is.
As a really big proponent of public education, I disagree wholeheartedly with voucher system. I don't think that it benefits public education. I don't think it benefits our kids. Where voucher systems have been put in place, they found that the utilization rate of those public vouchers is by people who already have their kids in private schools. So we're not actually providing additional education opportunities. What we're doing is we're subsidizing the education of people who can already afford to put their kids in private education. So no, I don't agree with voucher systems. In addition to that, when we talk about it doesn't reduce the per capita, that's not how school funding works. How school funding works in Oregon is there is a pot of money, is then divided up and sent to the schools based on a per capita basis. When you take some of that money and you give it to vouchers to students who are not currently in the public education system, you're now creating less money per student. So it is directly taking away from the public education system. It's taking away from kids who are in public education. That doesn't even take into account the fact that some kids are not going to be served by these private schools. They have the opportunity to refuse students because they require special resources. We have special ed kids who may not be served by these schools. They're not required to take every student where public schools are. Public schools are required to take and educate every student and provide them with quality education.
Thanks. Joelle, we'll start with you for our next question here. Do you agree with the administration's executive orders removing PEI programs and making rules for who can compete in girls' sports, and or government Kotek's refusal to comply? How would you plan to navigate that tension in regard to Redmond schools?
Oh, that's loaded. Yeah, there's a lot there. Okay, let's start with Title IX. So men's and women's sports, we simply cannot tolerate the safety things that come up in this topic, the fairness factor, and think about the general rules for any sport. You can't have your coach coaching them from these days to these days. They have to be this way. They have to have this. There's all these rules. We have to make it fair. We have to make it fair for the men. We have to make it fair for the women. And so we have to be really careful with that. All this is being worked out in the courts right now. This would be way above my pay grade to say that I could stand up against the president or any of this going on. But basically, the fact of the matter is, if there's not compliance, we are going to lose about 8 to 10% of our funding. So that is something that Oregon is going to have to decide what they're going to do. And so this is a big topic, and it's yet to be determined what's going to happen.
I just refuse to talk about things that have to do with culture wars and not the education of our students. So I'm not going to address the trans athlete thing. What I will say to that is that kids have a right to play sports. I play sports. I have a daughter who played on a boys hockey team. Everyone was fine. What I do want to talk about is DEI in our schools and the importance of it. I think DEI has been portrayed as this thing that is causing problems for students when really it is answering problems that students currently have. I come from a school system where there is low income, where the vast majority of kids are Native American who don't have access to resources that other students have. And I can tell you for a fact that programs that focus on equity and providing resources to kids that need it are effective and they improve student outcomes. And that's what I'm here to talk about is student outcomes. I'm not here to talk about culture wars. I'm here to say, how do we get our students the best quality education they can, get them onto a future that they're excited about?
Ashley?
That is a two-part question, so I will start with the DEI removal. America's a melting pot. I mean, we thrive, and one of our pillars is the fact that we are a diverse community, and so the idea of removing that, I am technically a DEI hire if we were to break that down. Equity, I've already made my stance on equity. I believe wholeheartedly that we should be doing better for our kids and our students and our schools, regardless of their starting point. And inclusion, well, the opposite of inclusion is exclusion, and who are we excluding and why? I think it is heartbreaking that this is gonna be the focal point of what we're taking away, and we're taking away programs and access to these programs. As far as sports goes, as an athlete myself, I played multiple sports in school, and I can tell you that it was not about gender and what individuals identified. It was about what is the objective, what are your strengths and your weaknesses as an athlete, what do you need to do to perform to be successful in whatever that outcome is. Like, that is athleticism. So I think we should focus on that, and if coaches have issues with how to navigate that, I mean, we have community members that would be more than willing to support their efforts to coach their athletes.
So I'm going to significantly take the same route that Amanda did and try to avoid some of the culture wars, but I'm going to directly address the question. DE&I, diversity. Diversity is a great aspiration as long as it's not at the cost of merit. We do have a problem when diversity trumps merit. As long as we can consider both, I think there's great value in that. We're right, we have a wonderful melting pot. There's a lot of opportunities to learn from one another, but not at the expense of merit. Equity, we already covered equity. Inclusion, the problem with inclusion is it includes lists. And lists are by definition exclusionary. If you're not on the list, you don't get to count. And it's interesting that we would talk about inclusion and the opposite would be exclusion. Harvard lost a lawsuit over admissions because they were disallowing admissions for Asian students that had the highest possible scores. They are a minority class. They happen to be a minority class that values education. They teach it in their homes. They teach it in their culture. They're smart. Call it racism if you will. They're smart because they choose to be smart. And they were being denied admission to Harvard University and many other Ivy League schools simply because of their race. That is exclusionary, not inclusive. Again, we need to go back to merit. We developed these tools. We developed admission tools and assessments so that we could understand who would best perform, who would be most successful in the educational setting, and who would benefit from it most. That is not exclusionary. It doesn't matter whether you're black, white, Asian, it just doesn't matter what you are. If you qualify by those standards, you're more likely to be successful in that setting.
Thanks. Ashley, we'll go to you for our next question here. How can the district better attract and retain teachers, especially for special education and dual language programs?
As a union member, I really think it is important to go into collective bargaining agreements and take care of our teachers. They are with our children. I would say, I think I did the math on this, it was about 900 hours in a school year. They deserve to be compensated. They deserve to have good benefits. We love our teachers. We appreciate our teachers. They are building the next generation of learners and those who are going to shape our communities. So I feel wholeheartedly in taking care of our teachers. The second part of your question was?
Just how to attract and retain them, especially in special ed and dual language.
Yeah, so special education is seeing a lot of challenges right now, especially after having kiddos home and then a lot of transitions back. Transitions are hard for our special education kiddos. It is also really hard to manage the varying needs and behaviors when you don't have enough special education teachers in those classrooms. I believe in professional development, and I think that there's a lot of opportunities in our community and community partners, right? So being a social worker, and a public employee, there's a lot of resources we could tap into and a lot of professionals that offer, thank you, training. So I would just want to circle those resources to our schools.
Thanks, Eric.
This is a tough one, right? I think Redmond did well by our teachers in the last collective bargaining round. That was 2 years ago, where it is upon us again right now, as a matter of fact. But 2 years ago, we did the math, we did the research, and we had the data to demonstrate that we were not competitive with like-sized districts in the state of Oregon. You really need to look at like-sized districts. It's just unfair to compare a rural district against Portland. It just doesn't, the math doesn't math, right? But in like-sized districts, we were not competitive. We had the money then, and we were very generous. Our teachers are good, they're worthy, they deserve to be fairly compensated. So I won't say it wasn't fair, but you can only give it when you have it, right? So truly, the main answer to this question is fair compensation. But there's a second answer to it, which is a good culture. Redmond offers, as a community, a good culture. It's where people want to be. So if we continue to do that, we provide a welcoming environment. We provide them a school board that supports them. We provide them district staff that support them. People will come for quality of life and not just that paycheck. My time is up.
Well,
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. We have to compensate teachers. We all know nobody goes into teaching for the pay. However, they want to be there because they care about kids and they're involved and they care about the next generation. So yeah, we have to deal with the money piece. However, there's also that reality of the special ed, and there's an 11% cap on what can go into that. And there's conversation that the needs are more like 15%. And so what do you do with that 4% that's not funded? And so there are conversations that can be had, and I think will be going on about how do we help the special ed program and how do we support those teachers. And then, of course, we have to just have ears to hear. What are you seeing? What do you need? That communication has to be there.
So yes, the contract negotiation that we passed was great. I think teachers were happy about it, and we were happy to provide that for teachers. The reality is that we're working with limited dollars, so we need to be creative with the way we spend money while still compensating teachers and classified staffs appropriately. I think ways that you retain staff in special education classrooms is providing adequate number of aides. We can't expect special ed teachers to perform at a capacity that's beyond what they should be asked to perform at. With English language learners, I think we could do a concerted effort in recruiting locally, helping local people who live and work, who live in this community, aspire to become teachers for us. We have plenty of people who speak Spanish as a first language or as a second language who come to work for us, but that takes work, right? Like that doesn't just happen tomorrow. That's getting into our communities, recruiting them, providing support for them, and helping them to enter into that field, providing the resources for that. That is a big answer, and it doesn't just happen with the school board. That's a community solution. And then also, in order to retain teachers, we also need to make sure that our classrooms are a safe place for them to be. So we've done a lot of work to make physically safe places. We also want to make sure that, kids and staff have mentally safe places as well. Students who are dysregulated in class, that we have adequate programs to address those needs. That get the kids regulated and back in class and help teachers teach through that and make sure that they have staff to help them through those situations.
Perfect, thanks. My most important job as a moderator is to make sure we get done on time. So we'll go to a 2-minute final closing statement. Amanda, you will start here. You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you.
This is like the slowest response. Again, I just want to thank you for coming out tonight. I think it speaks a great deal that you guys took time off after you probably had a busy day to come in and listen to candidates. And it also tells me that you understand the importance of this election that's coming up. I can't emphasize enough the fact that this matters, your vote matters here in this election. We can do a lot to shape and protect our kids. I want to go back and touch just a little bit about DEI and the importance in our schools. we need to make sure that every kid has every resource they need to be successful. And that's not just saying do better, be better. We need to provide the resources that they need to do better and be better. It's not simply about encouragement. Some kids need more than others do. We all have different needs and we need to address those needs individually. That is the importance of equity, is that people have what they need to be successful. Again, I am very passionate about making sure that our kids are highly successful, that when they walk down the aisle at graduation, which is the best part about being on the school board, and we shake their hands, that they are headed towards a future that they are excited about, that they're prepared for, that we're not telling them what and who they should be, but they've spent their years in high school thinking about what and who they want to be, and they have the tools to go forth and become that person. So again, thank you so much for your time for coming out here. I look forward to any conversations that we might have afterwards. And yeah, again, my priorities are that we are making sure the kids have resources they need, teachers have resources that they need, the kids are excited about the career that they're headed out towards, and that we really focus on student outcomes and not culture wars.
Thanks, Joelle. You have 2 minutes for a closing statement.
Again, thank you. It's been a profound privilege to be here, and I'm just so grateful. I truly have a strong desire to serve my community in a manner that allows me to give back in a most effective way. With a history of community service, including Edwin Brown's Step Up program, I'm involved on many levels of this community, and my grassroots endorsements back that up. If I'm elected to the Redmond School Board, I commit to advocate to improve the quality of education for every student in the district. I will direct policies that are common sense and elevate the educational outcomes. I will seek to create an environment of trust, transparency, and accountability for the monies taxpayers have allocated to our school needs. I'll support and listen to the teachers, paying special attention to what they are seeing in the classroom. And finally, I will find creative solutions to the troubles that are curtailing the effective education that we want for our kids. I do not consider myself to be an activist, nor do I have any political or legislative background. This will benefit the Redmond School Board as I serve with integrity and transparency while keeping students, families, staff, and the community at the center of my work. As C.S. Lewis so accurately penned, children are not a distraction from important work, they are the most important work. My name is Joelle Baget, and I'd appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Eric, you have 2 minutes for a final statement.
Thank you again for having me. I really do appreciate the forum. I appreciate you listening to our words. I'm a very simple person, and I have a simple agenda, and that's improving the public school education for every student in our district. I understand that we're not all on the same page in this room. There's a lot of groups that we seek to have a special interest in, and those groups, I won't deny, need additional support. They need additional social services, mental health services. There's not a problem with that. That's just not my agenda. I'm glad that other people have it. I don't oppose it. My agenda is the foundational elements. I want to get activism and agendas out of the classroom. I want to teach the fundamentals of respect and dignity. That respect means that we will listen to others. We will disagree with others respectfully, and we will act in a dignified fashion. The other values should be taught in the home, not in the classroom. Anytime we take classroom time to teach the values that are on our hearts as teachers to the students, we are robbing our students of that valuable classroom time that should be used to teach them the fundamentals that they're lacking today and scoring so poorly on these tests. I seek to do very simple things that have the greatest impact on return on investment. Again, I started the day saying these things, simple things like maintenance of classroom size. That means negotiating well with the union so that we can maintain reasonable sized classrooms. It means improving our curriculum. We are doing that now. It means preserving our contact hours. That is another negotiation element. When we give up days, we give up contact hours. Time in the classroom is learning time. Finally, one of the things that we really need to do, we need to change the cultural attitude towards testing. I don't want to create test drones. That's not my goal. I don't think it's the most important thing out there. But without data, we can't make good decisions. I need to know that my students are doing well, my teachers are doing well, and my curriculum is doing well. Without some level of testing, I can't demonstrate that. Thank you. My name is Eric Lee, position number 1, Redmond School Board.
Thank you all so much for having us all here tonight and hearing from us. As I shared briefly, I have a lot of my background that informs a lot of my questions, but really what I most enjoy is getting to know folks in my community one-on-one in small groups in conversation. I am an activist. I'm an activist for people. I'm an activist for our kids. I really deeply care about them. Some of my answers might not be spot on or on top of all the data, but I'm not a computer, I'm a person. I believe in accountability. And as someone who aspires to leadership and who understands that the climate that we are experiencing now on a national level down to the local level requires leadership that can adapt and change in real time. Part of my position as a social worker, I do crisis work and I do long-term planning. So I hope to bring that skill set to the Redmond School Board, position 1, and if you would like to get to know me more, I do have a website with a lot more about my values and my talking points, and I'm approachable. I promise you can come talk to me because I'm going to answer any question that you have. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Thank you to all the candidates for participating in tonight's forum. Remember to you in the audience that your vote is your voice. Ballots will be mailed out on April 30th, and you have until May 20th to get those postmarked so that voice can be heard. For more information about all the candidates, please check out vote411.org. And thanks to everyone for participating. Appreciate it. Thanks.